When people look at outcomes in a system, they often assume that good things and bad things follow a simple rule. They assume that if someone gets more benefits, they must also be taking on more burden, or that things are somehow evenly balanced. But that assumption doesn't actually hold. What we observe in real systems is that benefits and burdens don't follow a single pattern. They are distributed in different ways depending on how the system is structured, how roles are defined, and how work and recognition are assigned. So instead of asking whether something is fair or unfair in a general sense, it is more useful to ask a different question. How are benefits and burdens being allocated across the system? This is what we can describe as different allocation regimes. In some cases, both benefits and burdens are distributed across many people. Work is shared, outcomes are shared, and no single person carries a disproportionate load. These systems tend to be more stable. In other cases, the burden becomes concentrated. A few individuals end up absorbing most of the work, the coordination, or the risk, while the benefits are spread more widely. This often happens quietly because the system continues to function, but it relies heavily on those specific nodes. There are also cases where benefits are concentrated while burdens are distributed. In these situations, many people contribute, but only a few receive the visible outcomes or rewards. This creates a different kind of imbalance, where contribution and recognition are separated. And then there is another configuration, which is often very visible. That is when both the benefits and the burdens appear to sit on the same person. This can look like someone who carries a lot, but also gains a lot. Because of that, it is often interpreted as justified or even natural. But this is only one possible configuration. It is not the rule. The important point is that benefits and burdens are actually independent dimensions. Just because someone carries more does not guarantee that they receive more. And just because someone receives more does not mean they have carried more. However, systems often create a narrative that ties these together. They say that if someone is taking on more burden, then they must also be gaining more benefit, or that the benefit somehow compensates for the burden. That coupling is not always real. Sometimes it is structural, but very often it is interpretive. It is a way of explaining or justifying what has already happened. Another thing to notice is that these regimes are not fixed. As systems grow or as roles change, the way benefits and burdens are distributed can shift. A system that starts out distributed may gradually concentrate burden in a few places. That concentration can then become normalized until eventually it reaches a point where the system depends too much on a small number of nodes. At that point, you often see withdrawal. The nodes that have been carrying disproportionate load begin to reduce their participation, and the system is forced to adjust. So the key takeaway is this: there is no single natural way that benefits and burdens are distributed. What you see at any moment is just one configuration among several possible ones. If a particular pattern appears repeatedly, it does not mean it is inherent. It means the system has settled into that configuration. And once you can see that, you can stop treating those patterns as inevitable and start recognizing them as structural choices or structural outcomes. Naming declaration, benefit burden allocation regimes originates within meta-writing ecology as an independent structural model for describing how benefits and burdens are distributed across systems. It does not align with existing academic frameworks and treats allocation patterns as contingent regimes rather than universal rules.